Boris Dirk.
It's the Boris Dirk podcast. Welcome back, everybody. It's going to be a solo episode today. Drew can't join, but wanted to just, since it's the All-Star break, peek ahead to the rest of the season and just do a little bit of a mid-season reset of what the biggest stories to watch in the league are for the rest of this year. So I'm going to go through that, and then if you stick around until the end, last night I had the pleasure of attending both the Excel Sports Management and CAA All-Star Weekend parties. I'll explain how I got invited to those later on, and also my favorite stories from the night because I bumped elbows with a lot of NBA luminaries, and it was a pretty unforgettable experience. But that'll be at the end. Just wanted to quickly run through my 8 biggest things to watch for the rest of the season. We haven't podded since, or our last pod was when the Lakers traded for Luka. And since then, he's played 2 games for the team. And they are by far the most interesting team to watch for the rest of the season. Obviously, they've had 2 games against the Jazz. The Jazz are really bad. The first game was a beatdown where the Lakers looked like one of the most dominant offenses of all time. And the second game, the Lakers looked like they were already on All-Star break and didn't care to show up for the game. So who knows how much you can take from those 2. But the one thing that was clear from the first game is with Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves on the court, there's just going to be an absurd amount of ball handling and playmaking on the court at all times. They're going to be able to, if they want to, essentially either have Luka or LeBron on the court at all times, probably 2 of the best heliocentric offensive players of all time in terms of just being able to dictate the terms of an entire offense. When they need to rest both of them at the same time, you have Austin Reeves, who's shown that he can go out and win a game on his own, like he did against the Pacers, where he dropped 40 a couple weeks ago. They really might have the highest offensive ceiling in the West between those 3 and then all the play finishers they have around them. DFS, who can spot up for threes. Rui's been a really good spot up shooter and cutter. Gabe Vincent's making threes more. You got Jackson Hayes as a lob finisher. Like, their offense is going to be absurd once Luka gets up to speed. And the offense is going to boost their defense too. And their defense is definitely going to be a weak point. But when they can score a lot and efficiently, they'll be able to get back in transition, set their defense, and just be able to generally defend better. And it's not like they have terrible defensive personnel. You know, they have Dorian Finney-Smith, Jared Vanderbilt, both really solid perimeter defenders. Same with Gabe Vincent. So they can mix and match a bit. But it's no doubt their rim protection is going to be a weakness. But they also have 2 of the best in the game, maybe the 2 best players in Luka and LeBron at controlling the pace of a playoff game, which can artificially help their defense as well, artificially deflate another team's transition attack, keep games slow if they want, and yeah, they can push if they feel they have an advantage there, or they can really just sort of drag games down into the mud. And the other thing that was clear from that first game is Austin Reeves is just going to cook against opposing bench units. He is a tough cover for anyone in the league, but when he's going against bench guys when Luka or LeBron is getting their rest, it's going to be scary, his ability to score when those guys are off the court. I liked also the complement of him with Gabe Vincent, since Gabe is more of an off-ball guard and Reeves more on-ball, but Gabe can cover for Reeves a bit defensively. I just thought that's a nice kind of complementary backcourt to go against opposing benches. The other thing that stuck out from the first game is Jackson Hayes is going to play the best ball of his career, just catching lobs from Luka and LeBron. I mean, he's an insane athlete. I don't know if he's a great athlete. I've said a lot that he's the most uncoordinated elite athlete I've ever seen, because he looks like a deer on ice pretty much at all times, and often looks like he's putting the other players on the court in danger or at risk when he's sort of jumping. He's doing his max vert and like running in transition. He's definitely on the verge of being out of control a lot, but just catching lobs from Luka, like Luka makes these lob bigs look functional. He reached the Western Conference Finals with Dwight Powell as his lob threat. Like, he's going to make Jackson Hayes look functional, at least on the offensive end. Defense might be a different story. He might make Christian Koloko, their backup big, look fine too, or they just signed Alex Len too. And maybe Maxi Kleber will get some run at the 5 if he gets healthy, but I do think offensively, I have no worries about their big man position. And LeBron becoming the shooter that he's become at this point in his career just makes this duo so much more tenable. Like people make the comparisons to the LeBron and D Wade pairing in Miami, but LeBron and Luka are both much better outside shooters than LeBron and D Wade were at that point in their careers, which just makes the spacing a little bit more tenable, makes them both more dangerous as off-ball threats. And even though they're an undersized team on the defensive end, in terms of not having a rim protector at least, they're still a big team. Like Luca, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron, and Rui, that's a ton of size. All those guys are like 6'7", 6'8", and like strong as well. So even if they don't have a traditional center, they're just going to have a lot of like aggregate size, which I think can give teams a lot of problems and make it so they're not an awful defense. By the way, shout out Jordan Goodwin as well as another bench player. He's been a really good dirty work role player for them. And they're going to be really hard to match up with in the playoffs. There's no doubt about it. Like, I still would put Denver as the second best team in the West, but I'd have these guys third as far as chances to win the West because you need three elite perimeter defenders to stop them. Luka's going to take one, LeBron's going to take another, and then you need to have one for Reeves too. And they'll just be able to match up Hunt pretty mercilessly, and Luka and LeBron are just going to be able to bully whoever your second best perimeter defender is in most cases. Like, not many teams have a lot of strong wings who can match up with both of those guys. Like, maybe OKC does in Dort and Jalen Williams, but like, Denver, sure, they put Aaron Gordon on one of them, but now Christian Brown is too small to guard the other one. Like, they're going to be so tough to match up with. And there's just not a lot of hiding spots when you have to go against Luka, Austin Reeves, LeBron, and then off-ball threats like DFS and Rui. I think that small ball lineup is going to be huge for them, no pun intended, and just really key down the stretch. So the number one thing to watch the rest of the season is just the integration of Luka into this Lakers team. Another integration that's going to be key to watch is OKC reintegrating Chet Holmgren into their team. They're currently on a 68 win pace, best net rating in NBA history, at least going into their game last night. And the second, third, fourth, fifth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. So almost every other team in the top 10 net rating in NBA history all won the title with one or two exceptions. So by the statistics, they're on pace for one of the best records in NBA history, like 67, 68 wins. If they can hit another like 10 to 12 game win streak and really challenge for that 70 win mark, which has only been accomplished a handful of times. By all the numbers, this is by far the best team in the NBA. And we've talked a lot about OKC on this pod, so not going to belabor it too much, but just want to watch how they integrate Chet back in, how the defense looks with Chet and Hartenstein on the court. I mean, the defense is going to look great, but how does the offense look? Is there enough spacing with that five? Is their best five with just one of those big guys on the court and then a lot of wings around them? The lineup flexibility and options are limitless, and it's just going to be really interesting to see what they do and what their best approach is for beating different teams. And it's going to be really matchup dependent too, I think. All right, the number three most intriguing thing to watch for the rest of the season is the bottom of the Western Conference playoff bracket. From seeds 6 to 11, there's a total of 5 games separating those teams, and only 3 in the loss column between 7 and 11. It's just an absurd amount of bunching between the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Dallas Mavs, the Sacramento Kings, the Warriors, and the Suns. And then you have the Spurs, who can maybe sneak into the back end of the play, and they're like 2 games back in the loss column of 10. I'm going to leave them out for now and just look at 6 to 11, but they're still a dangerous team after trading for De'Aaron Fox, so I wouldn't totally count them out. But all these teams are dealing with, various levels of adversity. You have the Clippers who are trying to reintegrate Kawhi Leonard, and they've played pretty well, or they played better than anyone could have expected to this point in the season without him. Then you have Dallas, who is dealing with a lot of adversity, a lot of it self-inflicted from the Luka-Doncic trade, but they've traded for Anthony Davis, who I feel bad for Anthony Davis because he can't get out of the way of the injury gods, but it's just so fitting and sort of darkly funny that Dallas trades for Anthony Davis and they get the full Anthony Davis experience in one game. You get the first quarter where he looks like just dominant. Second quarter where you're like, wait, is he the best player in the league? And the third quarter, oh, is he hurt? I think he might have tweaked something. Fourth quarter, out for the rest of the game. Like they just got it immediately, and he's going to be out for weeks, if not over a month. It sounds like, and they just also got word that Daniel Gafford is going to miss a while because he tore, I believe, his MCL. And yeah, they suddenly it's all on Kyrie and sort of old Klay Thompson with not a lot of help around them. They traded Quentin Grimes also, which I didn't really understand for Caleb Martin. Like they traded the worst player. They traded for the worst player, but gave up a pick too. Like nothing their front office is doing makes sense right now. And if I had to bet, I would bet that they fall out of the top eight and possibly even towards the bottom of the play in, or maybe even Phoenix catches them. It's going to be a disaster. And Dallas fans are in an outright revolt against their team, as well they should be, because they had the next 10 years of their fandom and of their franchise secured, and they gave it away for no reason. And this core is not going to last very much longer with the age of the stars and just their overall reliability. Like as more time has passed from the Luka trade, it has not become any more clear why they did it. But so Dallas is dealing with adversity. You have Minnesota, who have been relatively healthy. They're dealing with some injuries now, but they're still kind of up and down, like depending on the night you catch them. Last night they beat a fully healthy Oklahoma City team, albeit in the last game before the All-Star break. Maybe they weren't bringing their A game, but that's an impressive win. But the game before that, they lost to Milwaukee without Giannis. So it's a little hard to tell who the real Timberwolves are. Their ceiling is still probably one of the four or five best teams in the West, but they're just because when Anthony Edwards hits that gear and their defense is really humming, they're really tough to hang with. But they also have nights where they just look very disjointed, very stagnant, like they don't have enough shooting, and they're just a really hard team to figure out. And I think they're probably going to stay in that 6 or 7 range. I don't see them falling towards the bottom end of the play-in, but they've been a strange team. Also in that bottom half of the West bracket, you have Sacramento, who's trying to find their new identity after trading De'Aaron Fox, and they've won a few in a row, albeit against subpar competition. And then you have the Warriors, who just traded for Jimmy Butler, which we didn't really get a chance to react to a ton, but he's been a fun fit for them. He gives them juice. He gives them like the free throw drawing element is huge. Steph, as great as he is not like doesn't physically impose himself on the game in that way where he draws a lot of free throws. Also may not get the best whistle at times, but Jimmy's relentless commitment to getting to the hoop, drawing fouls, getting to the free throw line is just going to be so valuable for this team. And if they get into the playoffs and playoff situations when the game slows down, it's huge for stopping runs. Like we saw that so many times when he was in Miami. Other teams would go on runs and Jimmy would just get to the foul line, take the momentum out of the game, slow it down, make it a rock fight. And they didn't have that element before. He's clearly the second best player, or he's clearly the best player Steph's played with since KD. And, that seems like a long time, but it's true. Steph's never really had that second scoring option in that way since KD. I mean, he had Clay before, but he just sort of gives them a new dynamic on offense. He's a great cutter. He's a much more cerebral basketball player than he gets credit for. He knows how to move off ball, fill roles, and just sort of pick up buckets on the margins. So he's been a really interesting fit, and they've been hot since they got him. They've won 6 of their last 10 games, and overall, I think they're 3-1 since they traded for him. So I think they can really make a strong play to climb up into that top eight, and I'm expecting now that they will be a play-off team after making that trade. And then finally, you have Phoenix, the Phoenix Suns, who are really kind of stumbling around. They're 3-7 in their last 10, and honestly, it looks bleak. Like you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant is still playing amazing basketball. He's so efficient, still like such a Swiss Army knife on the court, and still one of the best scorers in the NBA. But they're throwing out lineups there with these guys that look like lineups you've seen in the mid 2000s, not with the talent level that we have now. It's like Booker, Durant, and then Tyus Jones, Nick Richards, and Bol Bol. I saw the other night. Like that's not a starting lineup, which is going to get you to the playoffs. So I don't know where this team goes. They have a severe talent deficiency outside of their top two guys. the Bradley Beal trade just completely handcuffed them in a way that they're totally locked into this roster now, and there's really no way out aside from trading Durant and or Booker, which I don't think they're going to want to do. So maybe they can creep in if to the play-in if Dallas or Sacramento slides, but I think Golden State I would pick to be better than them, and Minnesota I would pick to be better than them for the rest of this season, and then I really don't know where they go from there. But those five teams: Minnesota, Dallas, Sacramento, Golden State, Phoenix, or six teams actually, because the Clippers as well. It's going to be really interesting to see how they match up, and how the order that they fall in. And if there's any matchup sort of jockeying, because no one wants to play OKC, but if you have Denver, the Lakers, Houston, and Memphis, are there going to be teams in there that these veteran teams want to play more? Like if I'm the Clippers, I'd probably rather play the Rockets or the Grizzlies as opposed to the Nuggets or the Lakers. Is there any jockeying that goes on there? That's going to be really interesting. But overall, just the West is always a bloodbath, and this year is no different. Number four most intriguing thing, end of this year, is Denver finding their stride. They're the winners of eight straight, albeit against a soft schedule. But the key thing, as we've highlighted on previous episodes, is Jamal Murray just continuing to find his stride as that complimentary star next to Jokic. He just dropped 55 points against Portland the other night. And overall, his stats on the year are now pretty much matching his career averages. And we're pretty much getting the Jamal Murray of the past this season. And since December, he's averaging about 23 points and six assists, which is even better than his normal numbers. So that performance has to have Denver fans feeling more confident that when playoffs come, like playoff Jamal will be there, because now at least we have a good, maybe even better than normal regular season Jamal. That makes you think that as we get to the playoffs, he'll be able to dial it up even more. So I think they're my second contender in the West, aside from Brooklyn. And really, we have a insane MVP race for the ages between SGA and Jokic. You have SGA, who's got the team success and really great stats. And then you have Jokic, who's putting up one of the most insane statistical campaigns of all time, and is probably having the best year he's ever had, which is as someone who's won three MVPs and has been the consensus best player in the NBA since 2022, 2023, and possibly was even before that. It's quite an accomplishment. So that's going to be really fun to watch. And I think also the early struggles that they had kind of forced their bench guys to get comfortable quickly. And now they have a few different looks they can go to when they're healthy, and are probably OKC's biggest challenger. All right, four more. Going to try to get through these. Number five, most intriguing thing the rest of the year, is the continued implosion of the 76ers. I mean, can they even make the play-in at this point? They're a game and a half back of 10, which like is one of the more disappointing things I've ever seen. That they can't catch Miami, who is sorry, they can't catch Chicago, who's not even trying to win. Like it makes no sense. They just lost a back-to-back to Brooklyn and Toronto, who are two teams, I air quotes, chasing them for the 11 seed in the East. Like every time you think they've hit rock bottom, they find a new rock bottom. Paul George scoring 2 points versus Brooklyn in kind of a gotta have it game when Embiid and Maxey are both out. It's like, okay, yes, can our $200 million free agent carry us a little bit? No, 2 points. Um, they've lost five straight, and yeah, every time you think it can't get worse, it does. And they owe their pick this year to OKC unless it's in the top six. So, and they're currently sixth in lottery odds. So maybe they just go all out tank and try to get higher lottery odds, but they probably won't. They've won a few too many games to get much higher than fifth. So that still doesn't totally save them. Or they keep trying to push for this play-in spot, but I really don't know where they go. And by the way, little trivia, the pick they owe to Oklahoma City is from when they signed Al Horford back in 2019 and then had to salary dump him to OKC that year in 2020 because the fit was so bad between him and Embiid and Simmons. So OKC took a future first round pick protected from them to take on Al Horford's salary, and then pivoted, traded Al Horford to Boston, I think, for more draft capital. So OKC, Sam Presti once again, just asset management masterclass. All right. Number six most intriguing thing is, can Orlando find their groove with Paolo and Franz back? When Paolo Banchero first came back, they lost 9 out of their first 10. They've since gone 3-2, and it's been a big adjustment period. They stayed afloat without him and Franz. I thought Jamal Mosley was doing one of the better coaching jobs in the league, keeping that team competitive. But the numbers do not lie that they've been their net rating has been 8.6 points per 100 possessions worse with Paolo on the court compared to off. And Franz, by comparison, is 13.7 points better with him on the court versus off. The Magic are. So, not saying Paolo makes them worse, because he's an awesome player. He's one of the best young stars in the league. But Franz has had more impact on them winning for several years now, and Paolo is going to need to find a way to adjust to the team and to score more efficiently and to sort of he often he goes back and forth between a few different archetypes of player. Like sometimes he looks like the closest thing to LeBron, and then sometimes it's a little bit more like Blake Griffin, which I think Blake Griffin is kind of where he should stay as far as trying to operate at the basket, uses athleticism and power, and then his playmaking, set his teammates up as like a secondary playmaker. I like that. He does sometimes lean into the like mellow ball though, where he's taking contested mid-range jumpers, and he's not as good of a shooter as Melo was. So it's inefficient. It really kind of takes a toll on the offense, and the Magic have just not you know, as many injuries as they've had, like they should be an above 500 team, and currently they're 2 games under 500, and they've slipped to 7 in the West. So this has been one of the teams that I've liked the most this season in terms of being able to really strangle opponents and assert their physical will and defensive will, but they've really struggled since their guys have come back, which is surprising because it was always their whole team is hurt. Just wait till they get their guys back. Well, now their guys are back and they're struggling. So can they figure that out? I'm willing to write off this stretch as an adjustment period, but after the All-Star break, now's the time to make a run back up towards the top 5 of the Eastern Conference. Above them in the East at number 6 and number 7 in my intriguing things to watch are the Pistons, the Rolling Stones, and they're 3 games up on the 7 seed in the East, Orlando. They have a legit shot to make this top 6 and skip the play-in entirely. And my bold prediction before the season is that they would make the play-in, which at the time did seem like a bold prediction, but it's proven to be far too lukewarm because they're looking like potentially a top 6 team in the East. Can't say enough about Cade Cunningham. He's averaging 25 points a game, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, just like an absolute star is born. And we called it here before the season that this was going to be his breakout year. I picked him to win Most Improved Player. I think he's got a good shot at that. They have Malik Beasley hitting threes for them. I've set the record for most threes by a Piston in a season already, and we're 2/3 of the way through the year. They've had a top 3 defense in the league since January 1st and are a top 10 net rating since then as well. So they're really on a real recent hot streak. And they're one of the more fun, exciting teams to watch between Cade, the shooting they have, sort of the athleticism of their bigs, and then Asar Thompson, the less heralded Thompson twin, is getting it rolling. His stats are almost identical to his identical twin brother's stats this month. That would be Amen. But in February, he's averaging 15 points a game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and over 2 steals, which is pretty much exactly what Amen Thompson is averaging as well, although he gets a lot more coverage for it. And Asar's, since recovering from his early season injury, is starting to really show why they picked him in the top 5 and how he has a lot of the same tools and upside that his brother Amen does. He's not the ball handler that Amen Thompson is, so that means his ceiling is not quite as high, but he is every bit the disruptive defender and athlete that Amen is, given that they have the same genes. And yeah, he's been really fun to see blossom in this stretch as well. And finally, the 8th intriguing thing to watch is, can anyone in the East challenge Cleveland and Boston? Because those have been the clear 2 best teams in the East all season long. The Knicks have the best shot at doing so. They're the 3rd best team in the East. and they're pretty much locked in to that spot. They're 5.5 games up on four, and it's going to be tough for them to catch Boston, having lost 2 games against them already. And I want to say the Knicks have a good shot, but also Boston has just boat raced them in both matchups they've played this year, and that's probably going to be the second round matchup. So unless the Knicks need to figure out their Boston matchup problem, and I'm not positive they have the talent on the roster this year to be able to address that. I think it's probably more of a personnel issue than like a scheme and execution issue. But the biggest thing to watch for the Knicks is can they beat elite teams down the stretch of the season? Because they've had some impressive wins, like beating Denver comfortably twice and some of the other Western teams, but they lost to OKC twice. They lost to Boston twice in really demoralizing fashion, and they lost to Cleveland. So 0-5 versus those teams. Can they prove down the stretch of the season that they can beat Cleveland? They can play with Boston at least. Um, Stat for you: Knicks are 11-12 against teams over 500 and 25-6 against teams under 500. So they have to a large degree really fattened up on the bad teams in the league, and they still to a degree need to prove that they can consistently beat these other good teams. Um, the only other teams in the East that might have a chance to challenge Cleveland and Boston, you have Milwaukee, and adding the Kuzma for Chris Middleton trade. I didn't love it at first. I think Chris Middleton has still been pretty underrated, and even though he's old and his stats aren't as good as they used to be, he's still a pretty productive player and was really good in the playoffs last year. But he, is not the most athletic guy, and Kuzma does give them a new dimension in terms of a little bit more size on the front line, a little bit more athleticism, and someone who can play the four next to Giannis at the five in a small ball lineup. And I've been since they won the title and with PJ Tucker playing that role as the four, I've been saying that they've needed someone who they can play at the four next to Giannis to give them the flexibility to go to that look because Brook Lopez is a great player, but he can't always stay on the court for, clutch time against all the great teams. Being able to go to a look of Giannis, Kuzma, Dame, Torian Prince, and then probably either Andre Jackson or AJ Green, like that gives you a little bit more of a five out, sort of playmaking everywhere, faster, more athletic lineup. And that could be a benefit for them. They're going to have to see if they can compete with the top competition as well once Giannis gets back from his injury, but they'll be an interesting watch. And finally, just to mention for Indiana, who has been pretty hot as well since Andrew Nemhard came back. I don't really take them seriously as a serious playoff team. We saw them make the conference finals last year, but they had one of the softer routes to the conference finals you'll ever see with Giannis and Dame getting hurt in the Milwaukee series, and then basically the entire Knicks team falling apart after being up 2-0 and everyone going on the injured list from that point on. So Indy, they'll make a series or interesting, possibly two series, but they're not a serious contender in my opinion. But yeah, can anyone in the East challenge Cleveland and Boston? That's going to be the story in the East for the last 30 games. All right, now it's story time. So I was lucky enough to be a plus one to two All Star Weekend parties last night. My roommate is through his company was connected to or is connected to people at both Excel and CAA. So we went to both of their All-Star weekend parties last night since those are out in San Francisco. And I had no idea what to expect going in, but we went to the Excel one first, which is a little bit of like a less heralded agency than CAA, but still quite a big agency. They rep Jokic, Cade Cunningham, like some other big stars. Not that any of those guys were there, but I go in, we're sort of walking around a little bit, and I start just like spotting random NBA luminaries. Like, first guy I spotted was Chris Mannix, who's an NBA reporter. He's not my favorite reporter, but it was funny seeing him in person. And then we see the crew of Excel rookies. Dalton Connect is there. Jared McCain is there, looking extremely charismatic and charming. And our guy Tristan Da Silva is there. So as soon as I see Tristan Da Silva, I'm like, oh man, I gotta find a way to introduce myself to him. And I managed to at one point walk by him and just quickly tap him on the shoulder and dap him up and say, that I took chemistry with his brother Oscar at Stanford, which is true. And that was he thought that was cool. I think I tried to keep it short since he was busy with other people, but just wanted to let him know that I knew who he was. I knew Oscar, and I was a fan of his. So I'm glad I got to do that. Got to walk by Allen Houston, tap him on the shoulder, and say "Go Knicks," which I'm sure he hears a million times a day. But that was a fun one as well. Allen Houston, definitely one of the coolest looking guys in there. So over and also ordered a drink with Mike Dunleavy standing right next to me. Did not ask him anything, uh, but man, is that dude tall and he's got a hell of a jawline. Jesus. Yeah. So the Excel party like went on for a while. Saw a few more people there. Armando Baycott, I believe, like a lot of rookies, and then we decided to head over to the CAA one, and my God, the star power at the CAA was just, I mean, right when you walk in, you're like, oh shit, I'm in Knicks country. Allen Houston had gone from Excel to the CAA party as well, so we saw him there. Theo Pinson is standing by the door right when I walk in, and we go to the bar. Meta World Peace is at the bar talking to people. Um, Ron Harper is there, just like it's Nick City. We do a lap. I see Leon Rose as well, former head of CAA, so that's why there's such deep connections between CAA and the Knicks. And not to bury the lead, we go upstairs and go to get a drink from the bar upstairs, and in the corner there is Jalen Brunson. I tried not to like die on the spot, which I think or I succeeded in doing. I didn't meet Brunson. I'm almost happy I didn't because it's a kind of a don't meet your heroes thing. He had his dad, Rick Brunson, in a gray sweatsuit, giving off heavy AAU coach vibes. Like we're running suicides in practice tomorrow vibes, running security for him. So it would have been difficult to get to him anyways, but was insane seeing him and Rick Brunson there. Um, Walked past Chris Paul and Cameron Brink talking with each other. Like it was just insane. Got to give a quick shout out to Cameron Brink and tell her that I went to Stanford and was a couple years older than her too, which, you know, always Cardinal runs deep, fear the tree. Yeah, and the last thing was just Carmelo Anthony was there and just smoking cigars inside and generally looking like the coolest dude in the room, wearing Cartier sunglasses and like a red and white checkered sweater. Like, uh, middle school me would have died on the spot, but it was pretty insane seeing him and just seeing all the Knicks luminaries in one place. Allen Houston, Carmelo Anthony, Jalen Brunson, all just talking with each other and yeah, just it was nuts. It's an unforgettable experience. I got to take a picture with Leon Rose, the Knicks GM, and yeah, I honestly had no idea that's where my Thursday was going. Big shout out to my roommate AJ for bringing me along to that because it was a really unforgettable experience. Don't think any of those guys will ever hear the Boris Dirk pod, but you never know. So if they do, big shout out to you guys for everyone who said what's up and was chill. But yeah, CAA man, a lot of star power. All right. We'll be back soon. Thanks everyone for listening and dealing with, 30 minutes of my voice nonstop. Appreciate it. Peace.